Hi, everyone. I'm Patrick Garnett, and 3 years ago we started what we're calling now the Master Facilitator Panel at a request of some feedback from prior conferences, and it went over really well, so we wanted to do it again. So we just took the list of participants that came, and people recommended some amazing facilitators, and they were wonderful enough to stand up here and have me throw questions at them, and from the participation from the audience. So basically what's happened is ahead of the conference I had sent out some requests on our SmartCal listserv a few times asking if they had any questions they wanted to ask of the panel today, and then we'll take some from the floor. So if you would just go down real briefly and tell us who you are and basically how long you've been facilitating and where.
I'm Kalar. I've been an online facilitator for 10 years now.
I'm Don Sheeley, and I've been facilitating for, it'll be 4 years pretty soon in Saratoga Springs, New York.
I'm Michael, and I'm a face-to-face facilitator in Madison, Wisconsin for the last 3.5 years.
I got my own. Hello. I'm Darren Ripley, and I'm a face-to-face facilitator in Augusta, Maine, and been doing that for the last 2 years.
I'm Hugh Delaney. I'm from the Baltimore area, have been a face-to-face facilitator since 2007.
I'm Patrick Garnett, Chicago, Illinois, a facilitator for 4 years. All right, so we'll just start with some of the questions that were sent in. So thank you, all of the people that sent some questions in, and I'll just read it to the panel, and we can decide who wants to take it, and you can add on. So from Joseph, would you say it is a requirement that tools be used in meetings? So what does the panel think? Who wants to take that? Hey, everybody.
I like using tools. I kind of like to do a stealth approach where I bring up the... Okay. Oh, dear. I like to use the tools where we kind of do the tool and then I tell what it is, so they don't feel like we're just throwing tools out there and, here's what you can do, and it's real quick and turns their personal issue into just this pat answer.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I would concur with that. I think it's an excellent way to take a situation that they may have described during a check-in and a guideline or a pathway to doing something with it using smart recovery.
That's pretty much what we do. Our meeting is very small. We run 6 to 8 now, and we use the prolonged check-in method. Thereby, a person is talking about his challenges and successes and setbacks and what he can do to move toward his values and that sort of thing. So it's my job to know when a tool is applicable. And so then after the person is done sharing, I pop up and say, well, it sounds like a good time to, look at the ABC tool here. And then we'll use the ABC tool or make sure everybody understands it, that sort of thing. So yes, I think they're behind everything.
Yeah, in my meetings with the tools, I have all of the tools ready, all the handouts ready at all times. So after the check-in, when we go to set an agenda, if someone has something extra that they want to work on or they want to bring out, that tool is available. I have my little toolbox right there that I can just grab out, and it's like, they kind of look at me like, oh, you knew this was going to happen, but you're ready. I'm always ready for it.
I think with my meetings, I like to always have a topic that we're focusing on for that particular evening. And I'm reminded about 2 or 3 weeks ago when we really got into an engaged conversation of the topic, and somebody at the end stood up and said, well, wait a minute, what about all these tools that we should be using to address some of the topics that we were talking about? So it's a challenge for me as a facilitator sometimes to say, okay, let me remember we do have tools.
Yeah, and I'd say that we kind of rotate. I know in Chicago, a lot of times I'll bring a tool and it'll be kind of pre-planned. Sometimes you just may not have a lot of participation, or a lot of times we find out some type of challenge isn't coming up. So either we'll pull out a tool, or we pull a lot of this articles from the blog, But in the check-ins, one of the things we like to do is when they're talking about it, well, as a facilitator, we use the motivational interviewing to try to say, so what tool has helped you with that, and what I found is over time, a lot of the tools are being talked about in the discussion, and I find my job as a facilitator is just to kind of pull that out a little bit and maybe have that person explain what that tool is. Maybe we don't always work through a tool, but there is this constant discussion of tools. So, all right, another question, Ashley. When alternating a meeting with another facilitator whose style is very different from yours, how to best facilitate from integrity yet honor the style of the other facilitator? Just whoever wants to answer it. Everyone doesn't have to answer it, but if anyone wants to take that.
I'm involved in that quite a bit, and actually what I found is that we're not really co-facilitating. It turns out the other facilitator really just wants to be a participant in the discussion and take off the facilitator hat.
How about like if you rotate? Does anybody rotate when we say co-facilitators, meaning like one takes 1 week and one takes the following week? I think that's what they were talking about.
We don't have a set rotation. What we end up having is a lot of people backing each other up from other meetings, and I provide a bit of backup as well. And I think we just trust that people go to SMART meetings to engage in SMART, to learn about SMART, and we trust each other to follow the SMART guidelines and do the meeting as best they can with the circumstances on the ground. And certainly there are people who expect the same meeting every week, and perhaps they're disappointed when another facilitator steps in. But we also have to honor the fact that there are new people coming every week, and this might be their first meeting, and so try to run every meeting like it's a new meeting for people.
Yeah, and we have co-facilitators, luckily enough, most of the time, not always in Chicago, but I know that our feedback we hear is that actually people like the different styles, and look forward to it. And even cities like where we have multiple meetings, a lot of people go to certain meetings, even though the meeting per se is really run the same way. The style is different, and so a lot of times people will go to a meeting because they like that facilitator style, and I think sometimes they just like something fresh, just a change. So, all right, Bert sent in, how do you recommend handling someone who comes in late and wants the group to stop what they are doing and answer their questions about SMART? This is a great one. Do you have that happen online?
Yes, that happens online quite a bit. The facilitators at US night, their meeting gets full right away. I do a very early morning meeting, so people do come in late, and now I have a meeting helper, so she can kind of go off to the side on that. But online it can be really distracting, because then you have so many people in there now, they want to help, and it veers, and our job is to guide, so we need to finish the check-ins, or we were discussing Jane's issue, so let's get back to that.
Okay, great.
Well, my meetings are held in the same, in a conference room right on the same floor as where I work. So the 3 doors to there automatically lock at 5. And so they have to come in.
Lock them out.
All right. You know where I'm going with this one. So my meeting starts at 6, and I have the code to the back door. So basically, what I do is, I'll leave that door unlocked until 6:15. Then while people are checking in, I'm going to lock the door, because what I have found is by leaving that door unlocked all of that time, if you're in the middle, if someone really has something that they put out there for an agenda that they're working on, and you're working on that, and you have 1 or 2 people that come in 20 to 25 minutes late, that's really a disruption, and it kind of takes the focus off, what we've been working on.
How about someone that can't lock a door? How do you handle that, Don?
What I do is I actually hand them a copy of what Bill Abbott put together. It's an 18-page Smart Start PDF, and I print them out. I always have them in my bag, And so I'll look at the person, acknowledge them, say hello, take a look at this, and then I'm covered. And then they're assigned to be, it's an assignment to be quiet and be part of the meeting. And, but the flip side of that is that, interestingly, our meeting has so many regulars, and it's on the small side, that they really enjoy. They tell me if somebody new comes in, you know, interrupt the meeting if it's appropriate, and give them my little 8-minute intro. And they enjoy that because then they feel the person has been brought up to, you know, the group, and they can be part of the group.
I know when someone comes in late to my meeting, I kind of follow your lead, and that is, as soon as there's a break, I'll just acknowledge them and just say, you know, welcome to the meeting. Have you been here before? If not, here's a welcome packet. And then I'll just quickly tell them where we're at and then move on. And then I think it's part of being an authoritative facilitator is to keep the meeting online, or to keep it going in the direction it was going, and just, but I do find that I do try to acknowledge that they've walked in, you know, and a lot of times unless it's too late, you know, I'll at least say, you know, would you mind just saying your name? And then I'll tell them we're doing our check-ins now. But I'll continue, if we're going in an order, I'll continue the order of where we're at and then come to them at the end, so.
I would echo that. I think that's a very effective approach that we try to use as well.
All right, from Kevin, how can we make SMART more accessible to underserved populations? And how can we make our language and processes easier to understand, or do we even need to?
I think one thing is we can use the tools that we have and put them in situations that people can understand. Everyone gets angry, or everyone I know gets angry once in a while. So, you know, we can use the example of someone cut me off while I was driving, and then I was angry. And so what was my belief? People shouldn't do that to me, et cetera, et cetera. And that will demonstrate the ABCs. In addition, sometimes there are, on the edges of SMART, tools that simplify our tools. For example, Michael Edelstein has a refuting my excuses tool, which is on his website, 3minutetherapy.com, and he shares that freely, although there's a copyright signal on it. And basically that is, if the ABC applies to the consequences I drank or used or whatever, then you can use refuting my excuses, which is, you know, I thought it would be okay to drink because everyone was away for 6 days and I would get away with it. And then you list the reasons. So it's kind of a quick and dirty way to do ABCs. So the tools can be looked at as very erudite, but they can also be explained in the language of the people who are to use them.
I'd like to speak to the accessibility point, and it's something that we've grappled with in Madison for years. We were fortunate to have one good solid meeting that we've used as a springboard to others, but I think accessibility to meetings really comes down to having people willing to step forward and facilitate meetings, and that they're reliable, that if we're prepared to start a meeting, that meeting has to be there. It just has to, and otherwise people lose confidence in the accessibility. So I just I don't know what the answer is. We're trying many things in Madison, but you know, more people willing to step out and step up and facilitate in whatever capacity that you can. It's always appreciated, and that increases accessibility.
Yeah, and Maine is geographically challenged for any of you that have ever been there. So, you know, I'm on the road a lot, and I'm just going to anywhere I can. If they're interested in a meeting and trying to find free space, that always helps with face-to-face. And I continue to meet in different towns 20 miles away with an agency every 3 weeks and meet with their IOP. They've allowed me their space to have. So, you know, there's like 2 meetings that I'm facilitating, you know, in two different towns. On that, and I have to piggyback a little bit. Is finding what you said is finding, you know, your facilitators that they're being trained in being able to be the kind of big brother to them, and you know, and I really hate to put it that way, but going, if they're facilitating a meeting, starting a new meeting somewhere, is sitting in with them on that meeting, going there, traveling and sitting in for, if it's 3 or 4, to see how things are going, and then, providing them some feedback, because, sometimes they're wondering.
Yeah, mentoring. I know another area, I mean, this is a big, speaking now with my board hat on, I mean, this is a big discussion and strategy that we're looking at. Tony and I were talking earlier about organizations and organic growth, which is what we've been doing. But we're at the point now where, and we have been at the point where we've been trying to, sometimes you just have to specifically put strategy into place to target specific areas. I think that's where we're at, because organic doesn't always work. One thing that came up with Chicago, and we're trying, Chicago's a very large city, and of course all of our meetings are concentrated on the north affluent side. We just started a meeting on the south side, and that was organic, where finally someone came from our south side of Chicago, attended the meeting, she got involved and wanted to become a facilitator, and now the meeting has started. And now we have Bob here today that wants to start one on the west side in Oak Park. But one thing that's been successful for us is we've been presenting for years now to all the different schools, to the to the students that are going to become clinical social workers. And what's been successful about that, this works with PR too, is that most of the time their second years, or even at their first years, they go on to second years, they go out to do their internships throughout Chicago at the agencies, which are then usually in underserved populations. And so it happened to be that I spoke at the University of Chicago, and 2 of the students there ended up taking the facilitator training and then starting a meeting for clients, but at a treatment facility that is more underserved populations. And now, 2 months ago, we had about 18 of their employees go through the training. So it's not an open meeting at this point, but it is addressing the underserved population. So, I mean, there's just so many ways to tackle it. And also it's just maybe finding that person that is willing to go into another area to help get a meeting started. So,
well, of course, I'm speaking about online, so we're accessible. And we do have people from all over the world. I've met people in Malaysia and Australia, of course. But we do struggle to have enough online facilitators. It's a challenge. There's usually 35 people in a meeting. We had to cap it at that. That's not ideal, but it was a compromise to get enough people in. But I do know that when I first found SMART, I looked to see, where's the meeting in Lawrence, Kansas? And there wasn't. And, is this real? And so, I mean, the face-to-face is very important. And we have a lot of people that do both, online and face-to-face.
Thanks. All right, this is a statement. And so Robert said, if we tell members what to do, they are no longer closer to understanding themselves than when they came here. They are no more enlightened, empowered, or independent. They could leave with an answer for their quandary, but would feel no satisfaction for resolving it themselves. If and when a similar issue arises in the future, they will not have the tools to resolve it and will probably look to us again to give them the answer, codependency. Furthermore, I would be assuming the responsibility for their decision as well as taking the credit or blame. That's empowering me, not the participant. He just wanted to know, do you feel that this is true or false, and why? Hugh, you want to take it?
Well, I think that's a challenge with the group support model is, and this is what I put in my introduction in every meeting, is that what we prefer is I statements instead of you statements. So that you're not coming across as trying to preach your opinion, and that's the best opinion.
That was a lengthy statement. That's very nice. I give the same spiel, at the opening every time when you come in, and one of the things that I let people know that are in that are coming in the group. And this happens whether they've been there for the last 2 years or whether they're new coming in. I said, I let people know that, it's a we're non-judgmental, and I'll kind of corny, but I said, I consider my Smart Recovery meetings the Planet Fitness of recovery support groups. And I said, we do not, one thing is we don't give advice. We don't provide advice. However, we will provide suggestions. And I let everyone know that by providing a suggestion, if a person is working on something, to please ask that person's permission. In other words, Patrick, would it be okay if I offered this suggestion to you? And that makes them feel a lot more comfortable, and that they are being heard. And you know, there's none of this. No finger pointing.
I think our job is to teach them how to learn about recovery processes, and you know, help them find the materials that they can use to help themselves with.
That's great.
Oh, and online it goes so fast, so you will have newer people that are giving advice. Oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. And so you can just turn it around with, oh, so that's worked for you. That's really a nice thing. And sometimes you have to say that like 6 times in a meeting, that different avenues work for different people.
Can I? And I'll just throw in one thing. And from my perspective, I'm also a participant. I mean, I came to SMART for my own needs and my own experiences of applying SMART to help me. And I'm not shy about sharing some of that experience in the meeting. Not as you must do, but this is how it helped me.
Yeah, one thing that we started in Chicago talking about is also we realized that, you know, a lot of times people are there when during their check-in, or if we're doing a discussion, that they really, for them, they just need to be there to talk about something, you know. And we always try to tell everyone ahead of time, you know, that you can always say, and I'd like no discussion on this. They even use a hand signal a lot of times. And it doesn't happen that often, but, you know, if somebody wants to share something and talk, but, you know, it's just, that's what they needed that day, was just to talk about it, you know, and they don't want discussion, you know, they're allowed to have that. You know, it's not always, even though usually, as you know, as facilitators, it's usually the opposite. Usually you can't get enough people to, sometimes you're not getting any discussion, you know, and so that it kind of works 2 ways. But I like what everyone said. So now at this point, that's it for my pre-planned questions from Beyond. So what we're going to do is just, if you want to raise your hand and ask something of the panel, and then I'll start running around and maybe get someone else to help. And then I'll come over.
I guess 2 questions. One, are all of you people who had an alcohol or drug issue? And have you ever attended meetings where the facilitator was someone who was not formally an alcoholic or an addict, and how did that work out?
I'll start with that. To your first question, yes. I found SMART for my own, sought out SMART for my own recovery needs. And actually, the meeting I was first attending, you know, I was wowed and then discovered we didn't have a facilitator, so I ended up starting facilitating. The second SMART meeting I attended was actually done by one of our fabulous facilitators who has a background in addiction recovery and counseling. And you know, I think they're very different meetings. As every meeting is different, facilitator to facilitator. I didn't find that. And perhaps I'm straying off from what you were looking at, but I found them to be different, as all meetings are different, depending upon the participants. But he introduced a format that I appreciated and was very mindful of the check-in process as being a way of building the agenda for what people wanted to talk about, and then used an effective technique of kind of guiding the discussion around you know, takeaways at the end of the meeting on how people can apply SMART to the things that we talked about on the agenda. And so, you know, perhaps more skilled at engaging a client, if you will, in that type of discussion, but no different than what we hope for in people just with experience of addiction facilitating a meeting. I rambled.
Personally, myself, your first question, I am a person in long-term recovery from drugs and alcohol with over 22 years in recovery myself. Second question, I'll make that easy. No.
Well, we'll move on. So, all right.
Hi. Some of the programs that are an alternative to SMART really they actively push social support outside the meetings. For example, they really encourage the exchange of telephone numbers. This is something that I think would be really beneficial in SMART, and I don't hear too much about this. In fact, I was at one meeting where I was exchanging phone numbers, and the facilitator was taken by surprise and said, "I've never seen that happen in a SMART meeting." I try to, when I check in, I try to just take a minute with the facilitator's permission to maybe mention something recovery-related that's happening in the community. And I'm wondering if you see much interaction outside the meetings, or hear about it, or think about social support outside the meetings themselves, and if you have any ideas about that.
I've actually gone on kayaking and hiking with some of my participants, you know. I think it's an extremely sensitive area. I have a young lady with an eating disorder in my group, and she's doing fabulously. She gained like 14 pounds since she's been in the group. And she is very antsy about phone numbers. She's not interested in that sort of thing. So people come from different places. I've also had prospective participants ask for a list of the people who are involved, and that's not available.
Once again, online, we have 24/7 chat, so you can always just pop in there and visit. Sometimes you just want to sit and be with people of like mind. You're not even participating in the chat. There's a message board, so you can post and ask a question or share something and come back the next day and see answers from people and get help that way. So there is, for us, there's the social thing constantly.
I can just tell you that in Chicago, I mean, that's been a big challenge. And, you know, a lot of, for Chicago, we skew a lot younger than I found than most of the country in a lot of our meetings. And because it's a big city, we have a majority are single. And so that's been a constant ongoing thing that we're working on, is the social aspect. And so one of the things that we did was we created a Google group, a private Google group. It's an email listserv, basically. And so in our closing, it says, if you'd like to be part of our private email listserv, please give your email address to the facilitator. And we also tell them, you know, they can go on and create an anonymous one. And basically then we put it into and it sends them a little notice that they're now part of it. And it gives them the email address. Now, if they send an email to the group, it goes to everyone in the group. Then people would see their email address, but, you know, they can do an anonymous one. And we utilize that for, pushing information out to them about SMART or changes in meetings, but then it's always been to try to help foster some type of, you know, social outlets, you know, sober outings outside of it. It's always been a challenge. You know, everyone says they want social activities, and then when you say great, then, you know, please help organize one, or that we organize one, a few show up, or no one shows up. But, you know, we do have people say, oh, I'm going to go to the Friday night meeting. Liz is really good about this. She'll do it and say, does anyone want to go and meet me ahead for, you know, Thai food? So we now have about 150 people on the listserv to help them feel, it does help them feel part of a community. I mean, we've had someone actually utilize it that said, I'm thinking of using, would anybody be available to talk to me? Here's, you know, and some people listed their phone numbers, or he listed his. I mean, and it's really up to, you know, but we want to make sure that we always protect the anonymity. 9 years, I figured that out. Finally, I can say that. Of everyone involved. So, you know, it's an area that we'd like to see more of, you know, and we do what we can, you know, but we have limitations. So.
Hello, I'm Sarah. I represent the Tuesday night meeting that Suburban Hospital, Johns Hopkins University has a SMART meeting, and it's in Rockville, Maryland. Rockville. And I wondered how many of you were trained before the online training. And I wonder how you respond when people share. I have difficulties with facilitators saying, I really like what you said. I really like what you said. I want to say, I don't care if you like it or not. So I'd like to hear your experience on how you respond to when somebody shares. And the other is thank you so much for your time and energy and devotion, or whatever you want to call it, that you are putting towards smart facilitating. And maybe at the Australian 2016 conference, I'll be able to say I'm a mistress facilitator.
I can't remember what the first question was. Oh, did I have?
Were you trained before the distance online training, or did you go through that?
Yeah, I took the last course of the chat room multi-week month just before the Moodle program came on. So I don't know if that's what you were asking, but I have not taken the newest online training. I've heard wonderful things about it, and I mean to do that. But regarding sharing, I do have a habit, perhaps, of, as people are going around during check-in, of saying thank you or welcome and that type of thing, just a quick statement. But what I do at the end of the meeting is I introduce the checkout, is I say, thank you all for sharing. I mean, it's so vital to our meetings that people come and share their experiences, and thank them for the courage to do that. And then as part of my own checkout, I may choose a common theme that may have come from some of that sharing as what my takeaway is, and to kind of bring it home in a I don't know, a smart package, if you will, and with honesty. I mean, I do truly appreciate what's being shared, and I'm a facilitator, and from a selfish perspective, I get a lot out of these meetings for my own personal benefit. So.
I had no training prior to the facilitator training in this area, but my background is in sales, so I have a good ability to talk a lot and absorb quickly. But I don't really make comments about sharing during the meeting, except at the end of meeting, I will always ask if anybody in the room had a light bulb go off or an aha moment at that meeting, to share it with the group, because what I've often commented about is that the best meetings is when everyone is talking, and particularly at the end, if we can go off on a high note, because a lot of times you get into deep, depressing topics, and let's try and wrap up the meeting on a higher note, I think really works.
In my meetings, I like what you said, but I did the first question is I did mine online a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago. I acknowledge what they've said. One thing as a facilitator is I will not side with anyone, and I think that comes from my background as being a therapist. Also, that's always in the back of my head, is I will not side with where anyone is. During their check-in, acknowledge that, and I think that makes them feel that they've been heard, and that's my objective, is to let them know that they've been heard, that we've acknowledged that, and at the end of the meeting, just see how everyone is doing as we do a checkout. What type of space are you in right now? I definitely don't want anyone leaving feeling worse than when they came in.
Okay, we have a question over here.
Hi, I'm Cynthia from Toronto. I started out, 14 months ago, and sat around for about 6 to 7 months with maybe 2 to 4 people. And then I don't know what happened. I did a presentation for an agency, and then all of a sudden we're getting scads of people. We get 2 to 4 new people a week. We get sometimes 18 to 20. I have 29 regular participants. So now I'm in this morph stage, and I do have a lady who's co-facilitating, who let me come this week, who's a participant, but I don't have an actual co-facilitator yet. But when I have 20, I love 12 to 14 is great, but 18 to 20 and all these big characters, smart people are smart. So any ideas on one? I thought of maybe having split we've got quite a large room in a library and splitting into 2 10s. I don't know what to do. Like, any thoughts on how to keep that? I've been okay keeping it rolling, but it does get out of hand.
I've made myself a commitment that if my little meeting, which I agree with you, 10, maybe 11, once we get above that, it becomes impersonal and somebody gets left out. And I don't want to run that meeting. So I made a commitment to myself that I'm going to break it into 2 meetings, and I'll do Tuesday night and Wednesday night at that point.
Well, I know in Chicago, I guess I should come back here. So I'm on camera. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about, and Tony, I don't think we've broken it. I mean, we've always said to facilitators in Chicago, if the space allows it, what you can do is to break into 2. If you have a person that you would consider a senior participant that really knows what they're doing, just to maybe do initial check-ins, and then to maybe pull the groups back together for discussions on a topic, or if need be, keep them separately. But so far, we've had large groups up to 29, and we've just found that, I mean, it just takes a lot more work from the facilitator, because this is where you basically just have to step up a little bit more to move things along. And one of the things that we did a couple years ago, I'm not sure if everybody's doing it, but that I found as a facilitator that was really, really, really helpful, this is my little tip, that helped me as a facilitator gain a little bit more control. And that is, what I was noticing is once we got above and a lot of our meetings have above 12 and that, or even at 12, what I was noticing is if you're going around the room to do check-ins, and even if you say 1 to 2 minutes, someone, what would happen is you get to the 4th person and that person goes like 3 or 4 minutes, right? And let's say you had said try to keep it to 2 minutes. So now you're a little stressed thinking, okay, we got to get around. Well, 2 things were happening. I'm noticing I'm getting really stressed. The next person starts to talk, then they go a little longer and I think, well, I can't cut them off because I didn't cut this person off, right? Does this happen? And then I also realized what was happening is they were checking out over here. This group was thinking, I'm not going to get to talk for another 20 minutes, so I'll just check out. So what I've been doing now ever since for 2 years, and it's worked really well, is I do a quick check. I quickly go around the room and say just your name, the behavior you're trying to change, and how long you've been coming to SMART. And sometimes I'll throw in and tell me one thing that worked for you this last week. So it's very quick. I mean, it goes around super fast, and I do go that in order. And then from there, I will then open up the floor to our more involved check-ins where we talk about successes and challenges in no particular order. What happens is immediately I notice the room becomes more alive because it's bouncing around who's checking in, and it fosters more discussion. And because it's bouncing around, I now have more control to then move it along to then either do a tool or do a reading, if I see that we're running out of time. And then that way it's not so noticeable of if I would have had to stop and say, okay, well, I don't have time to do the rest of you. So that's a little trick that I've used. And what everyone has told me is that because it bounces around, they're way more engaged. And I notice then the discussion immediately happens instantly, because when you went around in a circle, it just kept it really low, and then there was not much discussion. So that's a little tool.
Oh, hi. I'm Beverly. And great conference, great program. I don't know exactly how to say this, but when you talk about addiction, there's a huge group that's left out and would swell the numbers, and those are eating disorders. So, and I know that when I came to SMART last year, I didn't feel heard. It was like I had the sissy addiction in the room. So, and I'm coming back a year later, and things have improved. And the other thing is, there's a book about, that's not what I said or whatever, that men and women use language in different ways. And I also found that when I was there last year that, and I suppose now to a certain extent, that there are many more men than women. And one of the reasons I left last year was because it was a bit hostile, and I had trouble being heard. Now, there are 2 great facilitators from New York here, Gerardo and Greg, and they are absolutely terrific. But I think maybe this is something to be taken into consideration. I don't know how you handle that. So, you know, and as you know, obesity is, you know, one of the greatest killers in the country, and that would also kind of bring those numbers in and bring the female perspective, you know, to the betterment of everybody.
It took me a long time to become comfortable with eating disorders, and I'm a physician. And during my first year and a half to 2 years, I had no clue. And I had people calling me, and I would say, "You're welcome to come, but I want you to know ahead of time that, you know, 90% of my people are involved with alcohol, etc." Now I've had several people with eating disorders, like the young lady I mentioned. Eating disorders are different. Eating disorder patients are extremely empowered, and they're very aware of certain choices that they make. So they do not fit the usual helpless, powerless model of the addicted or alcoholic, quote unquote, person who walks in the door. And I think we need to address this better on the website so that the facilitators can become more familiar with this.
I would also, I mean, it's definitely a challenge in every meeting and heartfelt when it doesn't seem to be going well. But I think the most that I've been able to do as a facilitator is try to do my part in disengaging from the actual behavior itself, recognizing that SMART is applicable to all maladaptive behavior choices, and try to step back into the beliefs. You know, what are the beliefs around what's going on, and because we can all, that's where the commonality is. I'm engaging in this behavior to deal with, you know, some beliefs that I have about situations, what have you, and we can all share some commonality on that. Different individuals have different strengths and abilities and tact and stuff, and we try to bridge all of that, but trying to bring the conversation to something that is a shared experience is the challenge for the facilitator.
I know we're limited for time, but I just wanted to wrap that question up with, I've been asked many times from people, you know, what is the majority of the people that attend your groups? And that's the great thing about SMART is nobody has to identify as whatever they're there for. You know, so I'll tell them, I'll say, I'm not sure. They could be, there for alcohol. It could be gambling. That's the beauty of SMART. No one has to identify that. And we're there to change behavior. So when someone calls and wants to know more about SMART, and coming there, it's about behaviors. So whether it's someone with a eating disorder, opiates, whatever it may be, I really don't know what many of the people are and what they're there for, and they work as a group. That's the great thing about SMART is you work as a group. You become a SMART family in that group.
We actually have that in Chicago. We have actually a lot of people that come for overeating, and that's really the key area that we can help with is overeating. And so we actually have a facilitator that's what he came for, and he's lost like 100 pounds. And so he, and we have a lot of people that come either as a primary or secondary in Chicago. Because of that, he actually started a meeting targeting just for overeating. We worked with Tom and decided that would be, when it comes to the different eating addictions, that overeating would be really what SMART and the tools could really help the most with. So just to lay it out, we did as best we could put the word out. It was at a hospital, but unfortunately we just couldn't get an attendance to that meeting. But we are set up. We do have a lot of people, and so that's why we don't allow, it's not we don't allow, but we don't like bring food, like as a facilitator, I don't bring treats and that, because we do get a lot of people there, either again for primary or secondary. We also started a women's meeting that also just couldn't stick, even though we do have a lot of females that come to our meetings. But so a lot of our meetings tend to skew more male, and so that's why we were trying to do that. But again, same thing. Everyone asked for it, and then when we finally had one, it just didn't stick. So we're always trying to adapt All right, I think we're going to wrap up now, so we'll turn it back over to Sherry. So thank you to the panel.
Yes, excellent work.